Chapter 1: Death, Resurrection, and all the rest of it. The idea is to die young, as late as possible. Ashley Montague. Section 1: That little thing called death. At some point, we all went through the same thing. Around the age of 4, we realized there was this little thing called death. And it was a shocking moment in our lives. For the first time, as we looked at our goldfish floating belly up in its bowl, we understood the impermanence of everything we held dear, including ourselves. We also wondered how a goldfish ever managed to survive in the wild if simply overeating kills them. But that's another story. However, this death thing was a real downer. So we laid in bed that night, attempting to wrap our young minds around it. But no matter how we tried to process the idea of death, we still felt small, alone, and helpless. And that's why no one ever says, the day I learned about death was the best day of my life. No. But fortunately, for most of us, our smoldering existential dread was quenched in short order. And that relief came in the form of a religion. Our parents sat us down and gave us a brief explanation of insert religious belief here. Whether it was the Christian heaven or the reincarnation philosophies of the Eastern religions, the specter of death was, at least temporarily, banished for 99% of us. And we got back to planning how we were going to succeed in the ruthless social jungle of kindergarten. Time passed. We went on with our lives, went to grade school and middle school, and for the most part, we didn't think about death that much. And if more goldfish died, we said a prayer, flushed him down the toilet, and pledged to be reunited with him in heaven. And then, we hit puberty. Suddenly, we started questioning things again. Would we really see Goldie in heaven? Who actually wrote the Bible anyway? Who was this Buddha guy, and could we really trust him if he was a prince? Instead of conforming, we dipped a toe in the waters of rebellion, and we began to explore the world, physically, sexually, and also spiritually. Some of us took the time to read up on the various religions, or in this day and age, watch a few YouTube tutorials, maybe even scan a Wikipedia page. But the most distinct thing about this period, when our minds were forming like clay baking in a kiln, was that we looked beyond our already accepted views. After all, we finally noticed that these other religions and philosophies had a lot of believers too. So there had to be something to them, right? Billions of people wouldn't be Islamic if it was totally crazy, right? And so we ended up sitting in on various religious meetings and prayer services. We sat in rooms full of people who were chanting, praying, singing, dancing, stretching, and doing all sorts of things we weren't familiar with, but that they seemed to think was perfectly normal. And we did a lot of deep thinking and personal experimentation as well, like trying to meditate or become lucid and fly in our dreams. We tried various prayers and then looked around to see if any divine beings had beamed down in response. Some of us even dressed in black and tested out witchcraft spells we found on the internet. You know who you are. And some of us even did a lot of heavy drugs in the woods to expand our minds. But just in case you never really looked around at what the world has to offer in a way of explaining death and the afterlife, let me give you a really quick overview of what we all discovered. The 3 options. On the after-death menu, we are given 3 basic options of what will happen to us. The first one is theism. The first option is theism with a dash of faith. These religions state that upon death, a divine being takes us out of our physical bodies and plops us down in either a heaven or a hell. Depending on whether or not we made the cut. This is the meat of the idea. All of the other differences are just garnishes on the plate. Garnishes that we go to war over for generations, but just garnishes. The second is reincarnation. This brings us to the second option, reincarnation. This tasty option comes to us courtesy of Asia. It's more mellow, less demanding, and very popular. These philosophies promise that after we die, we're all reincarnated, reborn as another person, or animal, or something, and it is our destiny to keep on cycling through lives until we become one with God, essentially. There are many versions, of course. Some teach that our next incarnation is based on how we lived this life, karma and all that, while other Eastern reincarnation religions are more naturalistic and say something to the effect of energy cannot be created or destroyed, so we all just keep going in some form or another. Very Zen metaphysical stuff. This flavor of afterlife philosophy can also be found throughout California and Arizona, with a smattering of tie-dyed clothes and crystals to enhance its flavor. And this brings us to the third option, nothingness. The black sheep of the family, the cousin who likes to sit in the corner drinking espresso while chain smoking and reading Nietzsche. This philosophy can be summed up as, our lives are a cosmic joke. This philosophy can, and ultimately pointless. This third option is like tofu. We're told it's the most sensible, best option, and it will be good for us. But what's the point of life, we keep asking ourselves, if all we ever get to eat is tofu? My road to a fourth option. Now, I was raised by a non-religious, don't really give a damn kind of family, and thus my mind was left free from any pressure to adopt one philosophy or another. And when I reached my pimply, rebellious years, I really wanted to understand the world. So I approached each idea as objectively as possible, determined to figure out the truth so that I could plan my life accordingly. Because even the best career path seemed a little less stellar to me if it ended with an eternal bath in a pit of fire. So heaven, reincarnation, or nothingness? Which was it? I read every book, talked to 1,000 people, thought every thought, visited every church. I prayed around, if you know what I mean. But of course, I didn't really figure anything out. Nada. Zip. Every religion ended in a mystery and defeat. Logical fallacies here, a lack of evidence there. It was an all-around bummer, to be honest. And although I kept going sporadically for a while, eventually, like everyone else, I got caught up in the daily grind of life. Just trying to keep my head above water. So I had to push all of these high-concept, search-for-truth type ideas out of my head and focus on paying bills and all the other stuff that kids these days call adulting. Time passed, I thought about these things less and less, and then everything changed one day. The singularity cometh. I was 25 years old. I was at home sifting through the internet when I stumbled across an online article. A real doozy. About this point in time, scientists called the singularity. Basically, the singularity is a point in time when scientists believe technological progress will result in artificial superintelligence. And these things will be so advanced that they will transform our entire world almost overnight. The theory behind the singularity goes like this. Pretty much the second we build a robot that can think like a human, it will figure out how to make itself smarter, and then this will happen over and over again. And in a heartbeat, that artificial intelligence will be a million zillion times smarter than humans. And when it does stop boosting its intelligence, it will start to produce technology that will be so advanced that scientists can't even imagine what it will be like. Science fiction writers need not apply. It's just going to be too damned weird. Furthermore, scientists were now saying the singularity was going to happen in my own lifetime. And this really caught my attention. Hearing scientists say that humanity might be doomed in our own lifetime kind of catches your attention, you know? And it got me thinking. I sat back, sipping my soda, and let this new bit of information play through my imagination. And I felt my mind kind of shift around. You know, the feeling we get when the twist at the end of the movie is revealed. Or that moment when we walk in our door only to realize we left our debit card on that sticky checkout counter at Walmart. That kind of feeling. Here I had been, planning my little life out, thinking I was going to grow old and one day be explaining to my grandkids how to ride a bike or whatever. But now all these scientists were telling me that by the time I was 60, I'd be living in a science fiction movie. In fact, something weirder than a science fiction movie. A place so weird, it would resemble a world inhabited by aliens or gods more than the human one I'd come to know and love, or at least, somewhat like. Always before, things like artificial intelligence, genetic engineering, space travel, those things had been far in the future. Problems relegated to science fiction movies and novels. Sure, I saw The Matrix. I saw it a zillion times, in fact. And I had contemplated these things before, but these thoughts had always been behind a glass partition in my mind, no more real or worthy of heavy consideration than the never-ending story. These were problems that my great-great-great-grandchildren would have to deal with, 200 years away, 1,000, maybe never. In my experience, sci-fi movies had mostly portrayed AI as monotone, emotionless things like the Terminator. Even in Star Trek's timeline, the best humanity could muster all the way in 2364 was Data, a metallic-skinned android that struggled to understand even basic human emotions. Alright, let's pick it up again in the next video.